Hello and a very warm welcome to this edition, which I think is the 15th edition of Friday Live. And today I'm delighted to be welcoming Julian Roberts to the show. And we're going to be talking about all things leadership. And you'll notice at the bottom there I've put etc. because we may go on a bit of a journey of debate and discussion as to, to the bigger, wider world of business, and maybe just have a little bit of a chat about COVID. It seems to be part of the rule now of any conversation to at least acknowledge it, doesn't it? So I'll just play the intro, just give people a chance to come in, and then we will crack on talking to Julian. Okay, so a very warm welcome to this edition of Friday Live. And today, my guest, I'm delighted to say, is Julian Roberts. And Julian told me just before we came on air that he is a podcaster himself. So no pressure then on me on this one for him comparing how good he is with me. So Julian, a very, very warm welcome to Friday Live with me. Tell us who you are and what you're about.
Oh, well, it's good to be here, and suddenly I feel the pressure now. So, yeah, good to see you, Phil, and thank you for having me on here today. So a little bit about me. I'm a father of 4 daughters, hence I have a little hair. Perhaps you've got daughters as well. I don't know. Possibly.
I've got one of each.
One of each. Okay, well, that might balance things out. My job or whatever I do, I own my own business, and it's an executive coaching and leadership training company. And it you're talking about passion. It's come out of a passion and a purpose, and my passion and purpose is unlocking leadership potential, and that's what I love doing. And I didn't realize that, and probably till about 5-6 years ago, that's what I was about, really, having spent 20 years in the world of business. But yes, that's a little segment of who I am and what I'm about.
Yeah, that's fantastic. As a few people might know watching this show, and you may have an inkling of it from where we met on, I was going to say on Matchmaker, and that sounds like it's a bloody dating site, so, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't. Matchmaker is something that helps people to find podcast guests and that kind of thing. But obviously one of the things I'm heavily involved in at the moment is something called the Passions Project, which of course is researching and identifying and exploring people's passions. And part of that, Julian, is very much about talking to people about, one of the questions I always ask the guest is, when did it come? When did you find it? And how did you find it? And it's very interesting. Some people did come out at 2 or 3 years old and picked up the guitar or whatever. And others quite late in life, where they suddenly have this realization that, and it's like, why have I not been doing this before? Or maybe they've been on a journey of traditional process rather than thinking about what really makes them tick. Was that kind of, what sort of example would you give as to how you've started to connect with that passion?
I guess in some ways I've always been doing it. I left university. Actually, I was going to try and be a budding forensic scientist one day. That's what I did, a degree in science. That was what I was aiming to do. But I realized actually I didn't fancy just looking at test tubes all day long and being inside. So I opted for the world of business. I thought that seemed a little bit more exciting, a bit more interesting, dealing with people, and the science background helps you in business anyway. And I just got caught up in working for food manufacturers, climbed the slippery career ladder, and became successful, as they call it, whatever that means. And I enjoyed it. I was good at it. I was in sales and marketing, and to be honest, I didn't know that I enjoyed unlocking leadership potential. I didn't know I enjoyed getting alongside people. I just started to do it naturally, and always gravitated towards people, loved interacting with people, loved being curious why they did something or didn't do something, and just started to have a coaching style how I did. And it wasn't until probably about 5-6 years later, 5-6 years ago, then I started to reflect on the 20 years previously of what I was doing, why I was doing it, why I enjoyed it, what did I enjoy about it. And actually it was then I decided that actually what I enjoy is when I used to see one of my direct reports actually take flight in something, do something on their own, and really unlock that potential that I saw in them, then actually just hitting the KPIs of, EBITDA or sales revenue or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And that's what got me buzzing. And I thought, actually, this is what I like doing. And that's when I made the career change and started to then sort of hone those skills of coaching, and then trained as a coach and started to qualify. And that's what I do. And even now it's become part of who I am, really, because my wife and I, just as another side, really, 5-6 years ago at the same sort of time, we decided we wanted to foster and to give an opportunity for an unfortunate child who's in the sort of care system. And so this unlocking leadership center has almost become unlocking potential. And so that was the purpose and the drive for that. And we've been fostering now for just over 2.5 years now. So it's another aspect of who I do and what I do professionally and personally as well.
Well, I've got to ask you, of course, does that mean you've got 3 girls plus a foster child?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So you've already got 3 girls and you take on another girl foster child.
Exactly.
Mate,
yeah.
I am going to get onto the Queen today. You need to be on the honours list this Christmas. No doubt about it. Well, joking apart, that's a wonderful thing to hear.
I thought I knew 3 girls having you don't sort of have choices when you foster. It's not quite like that.
No.
But it fitted well, because then I sort of know how girls operate, sort of. I still don't really understand, but I know a bit more than I do probably how boys operate in terms of growing up. So yes, I have 4 girls now.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And interesting as well that you said that it was all about leadership, which tends to have a business context. But actually, when you started to dig into it, and I might be paraphrasing here, but when you started to dig into it, it was as much about human potential as it was about leadership as a CEO. Have I got that right?
Yeah, it is. It's not just the businessy side. It's definitely gone wider, and the fact that, and it's even my own girls. I encourage them, and my eldest is now she went the age of 19, went over to Canada to do a little stint as an au pair, and she's still there. And that was 4.5 years ago, and she just trained to be a nurse in Canada. And it's that mindset of empowering individuals and letting them sort of live their dreams and encouraging them, supporting them. So it is about unlocking that human potential. And I love it. I love seeing people just do what they want to be doing. And so, and being, part of that equation, or that privilege of being alongside somebody is brilliant. So yes, I practice what I preach with my children as much as I do outside in the workplace.
Yeah, that's absolutely fabulous. Okay, so if anybody's got any questions, by the way, or comments, or just wants to say hello in the comments, please do, and we will see them. And obviously, if it's questions, we'll deal with them. I've actually got one already from Gillian, so I'll tell you what, I'll ask it now. Gillian says that she's thinking about giving up her corporate job, but is very frightened of it. How did you go about persuading yourself that it was okay to take the leap?
Yeah, it is scary, and it is one of those things where I guess for me, I had to think, and this is the important thing, is I talked to a lot of clients and individuals about this is get to know what your purpose is. Don't just take a leap for the sake of taking a leap, even if you don't like your job, and whatever. But if there's something, sort of, you're scratching something, think something an itch here about something, start to dwell a bit more about it, start to talk to other individuals, other friends, family, and ask them a bit more about what they think what's your passion, what you're about, what's your purpose. And once you know that, and you get almost a center, it's almost like your anchor, it becomes your guiding light, then it makes very clear of what you're going to jump to. Because as much as it's exciting jumping from the corporate world into the world of being on your own and working for yourself, there's a lot of challenges with it, as it is with the corporate world. And if you're facing challenges and difficulties, as long as if you know your purpose and where you're going with it, it will help you keep you on track and not be so despondent about things. But I would always definitely talk as much to other people around you and get some really good quality input advice, and obviously support when you do make that leap.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know if you agree with me, but it's almost become cool now to be an entrepreneur. I've said this before on this show, actually, where back in my day, because I'm very old, it was people who became entrepreneurs or whatever. They were the people that didn't get any, couldn't or didn't get any exams at school. Whereas now it's like, I want to be Mark Zuckerberg, or I want to be Michelle Malone, or one of the dragons on Dragon's Den, of course. And Dragon's Den has helped a lot, hasn't it, in bringing that kind of idea of entrepreneurship and business ownership to the fore as an option.
Yeah, and do you know what? And I think COVID has done something as well massively. I mean, I don't know the stats on it all, but I think there's huge amounts of people setting up on their own last year, whether they were furloughed, made redundant, or they've just taken some time out because they've had the time to think about, do I really want to be doing this? Actually, I want to do something else. And so I think there's going to be a huge amount of that going on, and people sort of stepping out into being an entrepreneur. And I think, which is brilliant, it's exciting. But as with anything, there is challenges, and it's important to know why you're doing it. And it's really important to know that. Otherwise you can get so dismayed by it and so despondent, because it's not all, Facebook and Uber and all these wonderful successful businesses along the way, and you've got to find what's right for you and have a plan and everything else. But yeah, no, it is. I think there'd be a lot more, and I'm talking to a lot more people who are thinking about going on their own. They've got a bit of experience and sort of making that jump now. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I see it. I do a lot of work for something called Boost Lancashire through a company called Winning Pitch, and that's called Flying Start Program. And it supports startup businesses in and around Lancashire. No surprises there. And the numbers of people, you sometimes get 20 people or so booked on these things. And it's fascinating because I always go around and ask them what they're doing, what the plan is, what their vision is, and all this kind of thing to make it a little bit more interactive. Because when you're running these things online, it can be a bit dry and a bit hard work, as you can imagine. And I just love that bit of the session because there's such a wide range. Some guys bringing in coffee from Kenya, and somebody else is doing something kind of holistic therapy up a mountain somewhere up in Lancashire, and everything in between. So there's definitely a big interest, and I agree with you totally. I think a lot of people now are thinking, do I really want to go back to how it was? Do I really want, like, we're talking now, aren't we, at 3:15 on a Friday? But where I am, M6 is like a car park by now, and or it used to be. Probably starting to get like that again, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but that whole idea of, I see it as a bit like a hamster wheel that people get on. They get up in the morning, it's the alarm goes, it's kind of cliche in a way, but the alarm goes, they get up, they get in the car, they get fed up, they grab the breakfast on the run, the bosses are maybe on the phone, especially in the corporate world. And it does seem that people have almost had a reset, and it's almost like, right, get off the wheel, let's have a think.
Totally. And I think that's what's happened. And I think organizations are thinking that way as well, because obviously, we've got the challenges of, hybrid working, flexible, the whole thing of ways of working. And I think there's massive opportunities because, if organizations get it right and you can't align to every organization's sort of vision and mission to your purpose. But if the organization gets broad alignment, helps people contribute, gives people flexibility, you can almost create sort of a culture of entrepreneurship within a corporate environment. I mean, I worked in an organization a number of years ago, Johnson & Johnson. You probably have heard of them, one of the biggest healthcare company in the world, and they've got one of the vaccines as well. Interestingly, I was part of a huge conglomerate. However, each sort of company in each country were decentralized. And so it felt very entrepreneurial. We did things really quickly, and there was an element of real pace, and it wasn't all about going back to the US to get sign off. And so I think if companies start to think smarter, they can create environments that will hopefully make people feel they're sort of fulfilling their purpose. It's not so much like a hamster wheel. And that will be the war on talent. I think if you can get to that place, you can attract a lot and make people feel really valued and engaged. And so it's possible to be done in the corporate or the more organizational place. It's just quite a challenge, I think, for it to do it. But yeah, I think it would be possible.
And what do you think's going to happen then with the traditional go into the office scenario? I mean, I had an office in the centre of Manchester back in the day. I don't have it now. I'm thinking, do I really need it? Should I bother with it anymore? Should I just reinvest the money in other more interesting areas? What's your view of where it might go? Because a lot of debate about it, isn't there?
Yeah, I hope it's going to change the way we do work. I hope this last 18 months, that as much as it's been difficult, I hope there's a bit of a reset on how we do work and how we go about work and what it means to be connected. And, we do have technology, and I know we're all happy to meet each people in person. We need that. But I think the way companies going forward now have to really think about, what is their purpose as an organization? How do they meet that? And what's the best way of going about it? And can they do that with more flexibility, with their teams, that they always have to be in the office? If there's I think there's good to have a mix, because I think people want to have that interaction. I've heard companies talking about where I think on a Wednesday, they all go in because they're doing the more brainstorming, more meeting-y type thing, where they have to be like a hub to interact. And they find those sort of particular sort of sessions are helpful in person. And then otherwise, other days, they're more remote, or they're traveling around the country or whatever it may be. And so I think the flexible working, as long as it fits with the purpose of that organization, don't just do it for the sake of because everybody's doing it. Make sure it aligns to what you're trying to do as a strategy, as a business, and making sure those roles are fit for purpose as well, because I think roles will start to change as well. But definitely I can see, and I've talked to a lot of companies now, they're all doing this hybrid in some shape or form. Some are a little bit kicking and screaming. But, I think now, even I've seen it on job posts now, are almost saying we offer flexible working, or we or whatever it is, we work from home 2 days a week. It's becoming a thing. And if organizations don't sort of keep with that, it'll be something where people will go for an interview and say, "Oh, do you do a flexible working?" And they go, "No." Well, then, okay, forget your salary.
Thanks, no,
Well, yeah. And I think that's what's going to happen. And people are going to walk away, and you're going to struggle with talent.
Yeah. So I guess a lot of that depends then on the quality of leadership then, does it, Julian? The ability, I suppose, or to be brave enough to take decisions that might not be instinctively correct. If it's certainly somebody older who's more used to the way it's always been, is part of that leadership role to actually pass through your own bias and see what's best for the business or the people in it.
Yeah, it is. And I've been challenging a few of those recently, where people say, "Oh, we're all going to get back to the office." Oh, have you thought about it differently? What about this? What about doing it differently? What do you think? And I think it's definitely there. But we've been working the last 18 months with unknowns all the way, haven't we? I mean, it crumbs. I mean, talk about, back in March last year, it was like nobody knew how to do it, and people still don't know how to do it. Crumbs. It's one of those things you have to sort of navigate. And I think for me, a good leader is somebody who's comfortable not knowing, and that sounds a bit oh, leaders should know everything. Actually, if you're comfortable not knowing, stepping into that arena, look, I don't really know where, I know where we're going. I'm not entirely sure how we're going to get there. I'm not entirely sure if we're going to get battered or we're going to win here or lose. But I know we're going this way, and being open and transparent and being sort of humble with it, really, and I'm bringing people with you and teams and people around you to help you, support you. And I've always encouraged leaders, certainly in the last 18 months, look, be happy to say you're not entirely sure you know the answer, which is fine. That's okay. Try something, try a way of working, try a different way, a different approach. If it doesn't work, just take it as feedback, not failure. Feedback into the business. How can we do it differently next time? Let's have a go and start to push the boundaries and start being a bit more, I suppose, comfortable with that being uncomfortable as well.
Yeah, no, that makes absolute sense. I've got a question here from Clarice Stevens, and Clarice is saying, has leadership changed a lot in the last 20 years?
Whoa, that's a long time scale.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you answer that. I think I understand where she's coming from, but
yeah, I think, of course, I think it has changed. I think what certainly the last couple of years, what's come to more the forefront is leadership it shows sort of empathy and compassion. And I think, there's an old adage of, your people are your greatest assets. And I think, we've all heard that sort of expression and perhaps been in an organization and going, I don't really believe that. But I think it's becoming part of who we are, that people do really matter. The fact that we've had, certainly the last 18 months, we've had exposure into people's homes and their lives. One time, you just went to work, went home from work, you perhaps heard a little bit about what was going on. But now we've all seen people's lounges, kitchens, kids, dogs, cats, and all the challenges that people have, and got more interested in people's lives, I think, more. So I think leadership now has got far more sort of people orientated and more on the human side of things. So I've certainly noticed that difference in the last sort of couple of years. And it's not just a trendy thing. I think it's a real valuable thing. If you show empathy, show compassion, people love that and respond well to that and feel that they're a human being. They're not just some person been told to take orders. So definitely it has changed significantly. Yeah.
I guess it's one of the terms that I've heard for many years, and I do tend to buy into, is that concept of emotional intelligence, and how people feel and understanding how people feel is more critical now than ever to get people to. I mean, there's an interesting debate, isn't there? Because at the heart of it, as leaders in larger companies or any company really, we ultimately just want people to do what we want them to do to the best of their ability. Now that sounds rather cynical, but there's an argument that says that's true. Is it therefore then that the more emotional intelligence you can demonstrate, the more empathy you can show, and then maybe as a result of that, people will buy into you more and feel that you care about them a bit more and put a bit more effort into it?
It all goes back to making people feel valued. Giving somebody a paycheck, giving somebody a company car has elements of it, but it doesn't really make people feel valued. If somebody comes up with an idea and you just shoot it down in a meeting, that doesn't make people feel valued. Telling somebody off in public doesn't really make people feel valued. Actually, going to somebody and saying, look, I appreciate you having a real tough time at the moment, and just want to take some time out a little bit, or that being you don't have to always know exactly what's going on, but just being aware. That's making people feel valued. Giving people tasks and allowing them to go off and do it into their own sort of steam and their own sort of ideas makes them feel valued. Empowering them, trusting them, really does. If they make mistakes, rather than being sort of hauled over coals, as it were, that actually, do you know what can you learn from this thing? What's happened here? Was it me? Did I not communicate well? Were you not supported enough? Or was it just what can we learn from this? And supporting people. And it comes back to that, just making people valued. And one way of doing that, I find, which people sometimes struggle with, is actually genuinely listening to people. I do a lot of listening in my job as a coach. My clients can talk, and so I have to listen. And it's not just listening ready for my answer or my questions or whatever I think. It's listening without judgment, listening with a sense of, I really want to hear what you want to say. And you'd be surprised by doing more listening, that feeling that this person's actually listening to me, they'll relax and they'll think, I feel really valued because this guy's listening to me, or this lady's listening to me. And there's some real power in that. And I talk a lot of that with some of my clients about, spending time just listening and just allowing the individual to talk and share, what they're sharing at that time, and being genuinely interested in it.
I think that's such a valuable point, and it's something that I do business coaching myself a lot, and it's something I really have to work on because I'm a bit of a talker. You may be surprised to hear by now. It's the northern in me. I don't know, Julian. It's the northern in me, Mancunian in me. I don't know what it is, or maybe just DNA thing from my mother and father. I don't know. But I do have to stop myself jumping in, and especially where when you're more experienced, as you get more experienced, there's not many things you come across that you kind of really don't know, if not the answer to. You've got a good idea of some good, useful advice you could give them or signpost them. So in a way, you're itching. I'm itching to say, I know what you need to do about that. Yeah. And the little voice in my head has to say, shut up, Phil, let them finish.
Yeah, but also it's interesting. I sometimes my clients get into obviously conflicts with the managers and the bosses, and I do a technique. It's an NLP technique. It's called perceptual positioning, and it's a wonderful technique. It's a way of getting different perspectives on a problem or a situation that you may have some conflict with. And I remember I had a client over a year ago once, and he had this problem, and I was like, in my head, like I had a 5-point plan that he should do already. I was like, I'm ready to give it to him, and actually went through the process. And then obviously the best way of any coach, if the individual, the coachee can come up with the ideas themselves, they're more likely to act upon them. And he came up with 4 key points to fix this problem, an action plan at the end of it. And I was like, wow, I would never even thought of that. And he came up with something so amazing and so powerful, so personal, because it was him. And he went away and did it and sort of created a more positive relationship with his boss. And so for me, that was a real lesson of actually, yes, we do get ideas coming up. Of course, nothing wrong. And I always say to a client, at some point, if they're running out of ideas, are you happy to me to share some thoughts? I've got some ideas. And then they say, yeah. And I say, here's a few. But, you can discard them. You don't want them. But almost really hold back. And it's just that fact he came up with better solutions because he's in the situation. He knows it better. He knows himself better. And so it's actually quite powerful, and allowing them to sort of talk them through. And he went away very motivated to execute that plan as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've actually had a comment here from Paul Lockie, and he's saying, isn't there a danger companies reinventing the wheel, so to speak, under the guise of leadership? I'm assuming what he means, and obviously if I've got this wrong, Paul, tell me or tell us. I'm assuming what he means is almost that whole idea of change for change's sake, maybe, where I've seen this in the past myself, where you get a new leader, they're desperate to prove that their hire was a good one. They're desperate to prove that they are the best person for the job and all that stuff. And as a result, they start making massive changes that in some cases might not be necessary for political reasons, for example. Is that something that you would relate to or not?
I think yeah, there's always that challenge, isn't there, when somebody comes into a new leadership position or leads a team that you want to make an impact, a difference. And often that is the case, is change. The classic is, new brand, the person who owns the brand, sort of Kellogg's, and the brand manager comes along and wants to do a little tweak on the packaging and do something different, puts their mark on it. And it's the same in leadership. And I would always, encourage, it's good to make an impact, but you don't have to do complete wholesale changes, because actually what you have there already might be really good anyway. It might already be more impactful, and you're just adding to it. And bring your fresh perspective, bring your different perspectives on it all, and add to it. Because I think there is a case sometimes of sweeping everything away and getting rid of it all and starting again. But actually, why don't you just look at it more positively and build upon what's already there? And that mindset is far more positive and sort of impactful, I think, as well, going forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. It strikes me that one of the things that I would have thought would be extremely challenging for any senior leader, or arguably even board, a board of maybe a slightly bigger company, or well, obviously a small company as well, but is that whole thing about the pace of change. I mean, I can remember product strategies in my corporate career where product strategies would be for a 10-year product strategy. Yes, I'm not old. And and vision. And Thomas Cook, I remember there was something like a 30-year vision many years ago. So, and now you think, blimey, you're lucky if you've got a 3-week vision because things like COVID come along and all sorts of other stuff happens. Do you think is that something you've seen, is where leaders are trying to make leadership decisions about products or services against the backdrop of massive innovation and massive change every minute of every day? And then, of course, things like global pandemics.
Yeah, I think visions are good, and they're inspiring. If they're rooted in the right sort of process of how they got to it, and I see, to me, a vision is that sort of guiding light of a journey of a company, isn't it? It's like the sort of the destination. If you want to travel from Chichester all the way up to Manchester, Manchester might be the vision. It might be the sort of the goal you want to get to ultimately, and you might have it how many years ahead. And I think that's really important. I think that's where a lot of, I found certainly the last 18 months got a bit sort of dismay, because they got a bit like, oh no, my vision's gone all the way, or it's gone too far out. It doesn't matter. It will change. The key thing is understanding that the how, as in how you're going to do the strategies, may be different now. And they'll always be different. I work with companies sometimes when we build, 3-year strategic plans and all that, and knowing full well that in 2-3 years' time, those are going to be very different. But you've got to go with what you know at that point, and that's okay. But it's just having that, I guess, not readiness that you will have to change and adapt. In the fact that last year, what happened, people had to go, okay, I was about to launch this, about to do this. Actually, now I need to do it differently, or the timing's changed, or I need to invest more money. And that's okay. And it's having that more agile mind. And it's interesting. I was talking a lot about resilience last year, resilience, that ability to adapt. And I think we've all done that, seen that personally and professionally. I would go beyond that now. And I take some learnings from people who suffer from a trauma and get post-traumatic growth. And that goes beyond resilience. And it goes, what it is they actually change their cognitive sort of rebuilding goes on in their brain that makes them sort of transformational, and they do things that are completely transformation based on the trauma they received in terms of years later, and do amazing things of I don't know, athleticism or whatever it may be. And I think organizations need to do some real deep cognitive rebuilding and start to look for transformation now. And let's just stop being just looking to adapt and become more agile in how we approach things. And really, it's that agility that's going to win things through, and that ability to sort of chop and change a little bit, and being open to that things are going to change. And the fact is, we've always been uncertain times, but we're in more uncertain times now. But having that mindset that's okay. That's okay. We don't know all the answers. We might know the next 90 days for sure, but beyond that, it's a little bit more of a 60-70% sure, which is okay.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And it's almost that getting over that mindset of it's not fair. Well, no, it isn't fair. Whoever said it was fair, now get used to it. It is what it is. Move forward. Yeah. And I tend to be a little bit direct sometimes in my communication with clients. It's just my style. I'm happy for people to wallow for a little while because it's part of the human condition.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you're gonna have to get out of that ruddy pond if you're wallowing, and you're gonna have to actually make some decisions to try and move it forward.
Absolutely.
But I do think sometimes people get a little bit caught up with the "it's not fair" scenario. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I think they do, and they sort of, I don't know, they start comparing, don't they? And I think the not fair bit is a symptom of looking around and seeing company A and B doing better or adapting, and they compare, and as soon as you compare in the sense of that, then you will feel it's not fair. and I talk to people and almost get them into a mindset of it's like survival mode in some ways. That not fair and sort of complaining is actually switch more to more of a thriving mindset, and think about, okay, what are you grateful for right now? Well, what's going really well now? What are the successes? Because I think people they get so in the pondweed, they miss some of the real good stuff, and I'm not just talking about positive thinking here, because I'm not into that. I'm rooted in reality. But what was a good thing that happened last week? Oh, I got a new client. Oh, brilliant. Or Google ad campaign worked really well, or whatever it may be. Start to look for some of the positive, and suddenly you start to create this more of a thriving mindset. And bizarrely, there's a real link. When you start having a thriving mindset, you start to see opportunities as opposed to problems and the negative, and the more opportunities seem to attract more opportunities and more ideas. And suddenly it's trying to get people out of that funk of in the pondweed, feeling sorry for themselves. But yes, and it's a little bit of almost a reframe, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I can only speak for myself, but I was going to say really excited by the pandemic for a second then. And I thought that's not the right term I'm looking for. So let me rephrase it, even in my head. I was quite excited at the opportunity of being able to, if you like, put the brakes on the daily grind, for want of a better expression, and being almost like free to think and plan ahead. That's what I got quite excited about, because nothing else was happening for a while, pretty much.
No.
So it was great to pull out all those things. So one of the things that I've been working on, which is due to launch fairly soon, is a radio station. And it's just something on the kind of the bucket list that I wanted to do. And I'm launching that next week. And that's just something that came out of, what can I do now that's a bit different and something I've always wanted to do that excites me? So I'm going to do this radio station. Now, I don't think
so this is a result of the pandemic, in terms of giving you a bit of a pause time, making you get to the place where you're going to launch it.
100%.
Brilliant. I love it.
100%. That's it. It's you have those lists either written down, or sometimes you actually have them obviously just in your head as to things you want to do, things you want to try. Like there's new training courses I wanted to put together specifically around slightly what you might call off-piste from what I do in terms of that business support stuff. Yeah. And I just love this whole digital media space, podcasts, live streams, and radio stations, of course, are just an automatic step from that as well. Yeah. And I wanted to been keen to run some new courses to help people set up podcasts, do podcasts, and I've set them up. I've got them ready to rock and roll in actual classrooms. if there is ever going to be such a thing ever again. And the point I'm really making, I suppose, is that yes, as you asked me, the pandemic allowed me to have a go and play. I think that's the term that springs to mind, Julian. It allowed me to play in the sandpit like a child, because everything just stopped in terms of the daily grind of expectation and stress, I suppose, as much as anything else.
Well, totally. And it's interesting. I was talking to a lot of companies last year, and I encourage them and say, anything goes. You're in a moment where you can have a go, and if it doesn't work, nobody's going to really notice anyway. And you can always blame the pandemic. And so just try something, give it a go, and just take that step. And even if it doesn't successful or whatever it is, you may learn something that may take you on a different path and get you involved in something else that perhaps you wouldn't have got there. It's like a stepping stone, because you don't always know all the future, how it's going to pan out. And likewise for me, I started a podcast last year, which was based on the fact that I started to have lots of conversations with leaders, and initially my business in the first 3 or 4 months went a little bit quiet. I'll say a lot quiet, because of the nature of what I do. People didn't want to see me because of, although I probably could have been quite helpful, but the nature of investing in sort of coaching and everything else, that was the least they want to worry about in the short term. Fortunately, it comes back. But I had this phrase I kept using about helping organizations thrive. I took it from the sort of individual to an organization, and I just started having conversations with these sort of other thought leaders and started to chat with them. And I thought, do you know what? I want to create a platform here that can and I had no intention last year of launching a podcast. And so I did in the August, and I just got these people who I knew, who were sort of other coaches, consultants, some are leaders, various organizations. And I just started to have a conversation with them. And that's what's been born out of it. And I think I've launched about 65 episodes now. I have these amazing conversations with people, meeting people all around the world, Australia, US, Canada, and it's just been brilliant. And, some people listen to it, I'm sure. It's my own. I love it because I meet these people, I always learn every time I have these conversations. And then I've got this network of people I can pull on in various ways. So it's brilliant. And I was out of the pandemic, having a bit of time out to think things through, the nature of what was going on. And then I thought, well, I'll give it a go. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It doesn't matter, does it? Let's go for it.
Do you know, I'm so thrilled to hear that. I'll tell you why, because I've been doing interviews, video interviews and audio interviews and what have you since 2003, believe it or not.
Wow.
And a few years even before YouTube. And I've said to so many people, start channels, start doing channels or interviews with people, because it's a wonderful way to network in a very natural way. So, you and I have never met before, and yet as a result of this, I'm already feel that I'm really getting to know you already in a relatively short period of time. And they are a fantastic way to network with people. And, quite often as well, it disarms that kind of sales elephant in the room. Yep. So if you go and meet somebody, obviously everything's online at the moment, but if you actually go and meet somebody to do an interview with them, you're in the office, you're in the office, you're doing the interview, you're chatting to them. There's an excuse for talking about whatever you're talking about. And almost every time when that happens, somebody who you're interviewing will say, "What is it you do again?" At the end of the podcast, usually, what is it you do again? And you hear, "Oh, well, actually," and then you're looking for collaborations and you build. Yep. So it's wonderful to hear you saying that as a living, breathing person who's actually been doing that actively as part of that strategy and process. And of course, it's fun as well, isn't it?
It's brilliant fun, and I say I learn so much. I mean, I'm talking to some amazing people like crumbs. I can just sit there I have 30-40 minutes with somebody thinking this would have cost me hundreds of pounds just to have that insights that they're sharing. I go, right, I'll use that. I really like that.
Exactly.
So, exactly. And that's what I do. Just love it. Brilliant.
So many benefits to it. Well, actually, whilst I've got you on, and even though this is live, I'm going to ask you actually, because the radio station is called the Journey Radio Experience, and it's amalgamating really learning and development, business and fulfillment in work, blah blah blah, passions, blah blah blah, and it's amalgamating that with music. So if you're interested, I would love to have you on that as well.
Absolutely,
and if you're interested, obviously we're connected on email now, and if you're interested, I need you to think about 5 music tracks that you find very motivational or inspirational or just move you in some way.
Okay, that's good.
Now, so far, Julian, the problem I've had is people coming back to me. Can it only be 5? Yes, it can only be 5. Because they hit the playlists and they start remembering all this music that they've laughed to, cried to, run to, been in the gym to, whatever it is. So have a think about those 5 tracks. Email them over to me when you've had a think, and we'll get you sorted out. And I'd love to have you on, and we can have a chat and play your favorite music. It's like Desert Island Disc 2021.
That sounds great. I like that. That's a really good idea. Yeah. Oh, I feel like suddenly I'm a celebrity. Crumbs. It's
absolutely that. I'm going to be known as the guy that resurrected Desert Island Discs. Of course, anybody you speak to who's under 30 or whatever has not a clue what you're talking about. But
yes.
but yeah. But it is what it is exactly that. It's just ways of what I usually say to all clients is, if you want to be successful in business or your career, you have to be seen and heard.
Yeah.
And it's just an absolute necessity. So you have to aim to be seen and heard, overcome all those fears. And I've said on here before, there's about 5 phobias that are kicking in, like scopophobia, fear of the camera, phonophobia, fear of your own voice. They're all kicking in, all the little chattering monkeys, as they sometimes call it, saying, like with you got a bald head, what you doing on camera, all that sort of stuff.
I'm compensating. Don't worry, I am compensating.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, I'm I'm just as well, because people might have thought we were related if you hadn't had a beard. If you hadn't had a beard. So that's absolutely wonderful. So yeah, so if you're interested in that, obviously drop me a note, and I'd love to have you on that. Okay, well we're coming to the end. I'm going to ask you a question, put you on the spot a little bit, I suppose. I know we could talk for a lot longer, but we'll save some of that for the radio experience.
Yeah.
If you had to identify and name 3 critical characteristics of the best leaders, what might be the 3 that you would put forward?
What, people or characteristics? What, as in?
Yeah, characteristics as in personality types, or everything from, I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but the sort of things you'd expect to see in somebody. If I give you an example, confidence might be one.
Okay.
Fabulous communicator might be another. That sort of thing.
Okay. I think the first one for me would be courage. Having the courage to step into an arena without knowing the sort of the future, I guess, because that's the place we're in at the moment. So courage.
That's a great one. Yeah.
I think, crumbs, there's so many.
There are
so many.
There are.
I'd probably go back to empathy again. I think empathy is really important. I think that's that knowing, that having that understanding of other people is valuable. It's linked to sort of EQ. And then I think the other one would be more transparent. I think people want to see who you really are, and it ties into the authenticity piece. So that's a bit overused word, but that sense of you're matching what you're saying in your own life as well, and people can see that. There's such power in role modeling. I think people forget how powerful role modeling is, how people observe, not just consciously, but that subconsciously we observe, and we pick up all sorts of things, that values, beliefs in what you observe. So that's sort of transparency, really important.
Seeing as I put you on the spot, that was absolute bullseye. Because I did put you on the spot. I know I didn't prepare you.
I thought you were going to say something else after the bull, actually. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, but as we know, that's part and parcel of life and work, isn't it? That word.
Exactly, yes. No.
Yeah, it is. No, I agree totally. I would have probably said the same 3, ironically. Coincidentally, I should say, not ironically. I think I probably would have said the same 3. But I suppose that we've talked about resilience, and it's definitely there's just an expectation of employees, and arguably quite rightly so, that the bosses, whoever the bosses are, have got all the answers. It's a bit like politicians, and we won't do politics, but it's a little bit like politicians. That politicians, they're paid reasonably well, so they've got all the answers.
Yeah.
And the reality is, none of them are Nostradamus that I'm aware of.
No.
So I reckon that's a big pressure to be able to decide on, especially even things like when they get an offer for the business. Do we sell it? Don't we sell it? Is it, do we take that £5 million offer of investment from the bank? Do we sell part of it off? Do we start a new retail division? There's such massive decisions. And I think, as we've seen for many, many years, a lot of those decisions inevitably go belly up.
Yeah, they do. And it's interesting. Another thing I started to talk a lot last year with leaders, and in the eye of the storm, and it all started, is about visibility. And I gave almost an analogy or a metaphor of a ship, in a storm, and you might be steering it, not entirely sure where it's going, how to get out of it. But as long as you're holding the sort of the wheel, whatever you call it, and people can see that, they can put their head up and look onto the sort of the deck and see you, and you're visible. You might not entirely sure what doing, you're visible. Because a lot of leaders almost went down to the bow and literally hunkered down, and they weren't visible. And those are the ones that organizations really struggle, because they looked up and went, "Oh, we can't see anybody trying to at the helm here. What's going on?" At least somebody's there, visible. They're trying their best, and I think visibility is really important as well in terms of that, making an impact with your people. Again, it goes back to role modeling. People being seen.
It does, and it also at the same time reminds me that fear is a human condition. And fear is not something you just get rid of when you hit a certain level in a company, or a certain level of capability, or level of celebrity even. It's there within us. It's part of our fight and flight and all the physiological stuff and psychological stuff we've got from back in the Stone Age, really. Yeah. And that fear strikes in virtually every one of us at some point.
Yeah, no, totally.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks for that, Julian. Really appreciated it. That's 51 minutes that's flown by, I have to say. And thanks for joining me today on Friday Live. I'm delighted you came back to me on matchmaker.fm. It's not a dating site. It's a matchmaking podcasters.
Well, I'm happy to have a beer with you, Phil, when I'm up in the north. Definitely.
Of course, absolutely. When we can go out properly. And I don't think anybody's quite sure at the moment. I don't know about you, but everybody's not quite sure at the moment what you can and can't do, what you should and shouldn't do. So everybody's kind of taking, cautious, aren't they?
Yeah, indeed,
rather than just saying, "Oh yeah, right, okay, let's have a beer." You're never quite sure. And then you see something on the TV, and you've got 170 people in a pub throwing beer everywhere, and you're thinking, "Is that actually allowed right now?" Exactly. So no, it would be lovely to obviously meet in the real world, Julian, and I'm sure we'll be able to do that at some point. And in the meantime, get those 5 tracks over, and we'll get you on the Journey Radio experience as soon as it launches, which will be in the next week or two.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a great conversation.
Fabulous. All right, Julian, take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks very much, everybody, for joining us today on Friday Live. As I say, this is the 15th show, and we're going to take a break now, probably for a couple of weeks, before we go into the next season. And we've got lots of great guests lined up, and I'm going to be rattling on about all sorts of gibberish. So it's going to be pretty much business as usual in the very near future. So thanks for joining us today. Have a great weekend, and it's goodbye from... Oh, I will try that. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. Or you.
Julian. Julian, that was the opportunity. Kill it.
I know. Sorry. And it's goodbye from him.
Oh, we got there eventually.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. See you all soon. Bye for now.